The radar screen glowed green in the cramped cockpit as Lieutenant Commander William Bull Halsey Jr. spotted the convoy 30 miles ahead. 8 Japanese cargo ships, heavy with supplies for their Pacific garrisons, moved through the darkness believing they were invisible. The massive PBY Catalina, painted black as midnight and silent as death, descended toward the water. Halsey's crew prepared their torpedoes while the enemy ships sailed on, completely unaware that America's most unlikely predator was about to strike. What happened next would change naval warfare forever and prove that sometimes the most overlooked weapons become the most deadly. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The year was 1943, and the Pacific War had reached a critical turning point. Japanese supply lines stretched across thousands of miles of ocean, connecting their island fortresses with the home islands. These convoys, loaded with ammunition, food, fuel, and reinforcements, were the lifeline that kept their Pacific empire functioning. By day, they moved under the protection of fighter aircraft and escort vessels. But when darkness fell, the Japanese commanders believed their ships were safe from American attack. They were catastrophically wrong. In a hangar at Espiritu Santo in the New Hebrides, ground crews worked through the tropical heat, transforming the ungainly PBY Catalina into something the Japanese had never encountered. The Consolidated PBY, affectionately known as the Cat to its crews, was never meant to be a night fighter. With its high-mounted wing, boat-like hull, and 2 radial engines, it looked more like a flying whale than a weapon of war. Its maximum speed of 190 miles per hour made it slower than most fighters of the previous war. But what the Catalina lacked in speed and grace, it more than made up for in range, endurance, and now, stealth. The transformation began with paint. Glossy navy blue gave way to flat black that seemed to absorb light itself. Every reflective surface was dulled or covered. The national insignia were painted in the darkest blue available, barely visible unless you knew where to look. But the real innovation was the addition of radar equipment. The ASV radar, originally designed for submarine hunting, could detect ships on the surface from miles away, giving the Black Cat's eyes in the darkness that surpassed even the most experienced lookouts. Lieutenant Commander William Ault stood before his assembled crew in the briefing hut, his weather-beaten face serious in the lamplight. At 32, Ault was already a veteran of 2 years of Pacific combat, having participated in the Doolittle Raid and survived the Battle of the Coral Sea. His crews respected him not just for his experience, but for his methodical approach to what many considered suicide missions. "Gentlemen," Ault began, pointing to the map behind him, "intelligence indicates a major Japanese convoy will be moving through the slot tonight. 8 cargo vessels, possibly 2 destroyers as escort. They'll be hugging the coast of Bougainville, thinking the darkness and the proximity to their own airfields will protect them." Radio Man First Class. Johnny Rodriguez raised his hand. "Sir, what about their night fighters? The Japanese have been getting better at intercepting our night missions." Ault nodded grimly. "That's why we're going in low and quiet. The Catalina's advantage isn't speed or firepower, it's our ability to disappear into the darkness and strike without warning. We'll approach from the southwest, using the shadow of the mountains to mask our approach. Each aircraft will carry 2 Mark 13 torpedoes and a full load of depth charges." The assembled airmen shifted in their seats. Night torpedo attacks in the PBY were among the most dangerous missions in the Pacific. The aircraft had to fly low and straight for the torpedo run, making them vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire. Unlike the speedy torpedo bombers, the Catalina couldn't dash away after dropping its weapons. It had to lumber through the enemy's defensive fire, hoping its black paint and the confusion of night combat would be enough protection. Petty Officer Second Class. Marcus Washington, a mechanic who had volunteered for flight duty, raised a concern that was on everyone's mind. "Commander, what happens if we get jumped by Zeros on the way back? The Cat isn't exactly built for dogfighting." "That's why we fly different routes home," Ault replied. "No 2 aircraft will take the same path back to base. We'll be spread out across 50 miles of ocean, flying barely above the waves. The Japanese fighters will have to find us first, and in this darkness, that won't be easy." As the briefing concluded and the crews prepared for their mission, None of them fully understood they were about to participate in the birth of a new form of warfare. The Black Cat squadrons would eventually sink over 200,000 tons of Japanese shipping and rescue hundreds of downed Allied airmen. But tonight, they were simply airmen preparing for another dangerous mission in a war that had already claimed too many of their friends. The 4 PBY Catalinas took off into the humid Pacific night at 20-minute intervals. Each aircraft carried a crew of 9 men, their individual skills combining to turn the lumbering flying boat into a precision weapon. The pilot and co-pilot handled the flying, while the radar operator guided them to their targets. Gunners manned the defensive positions, though everyone knew the Black Cat's best defense was not being seen at all. Lieutenant Commander Ault's aircraft, christened Midnight Prowler, was the first to reach the patrol area. Flying at 800 feet above the Black Pacific, the Catalina was invisible from below, and nearly so from above. The only sounds were the steady drone of the Wright R-1830 engines and the quiet hum of the radar equipment. "Contact bearing 020, range 25 miles, called out radar operator Chief Petty Officer David Kim, his eyes fixed on the green glow of his scope. "Multiple targets, looks like a convoy in formation." Ault felt his pulse quicken. This was the moment they had trained for, but training never fully prepared you for the reality of combat. He began a gradual descent, bringing the Catalina down to just 50 feet above the waves. At this altitude, they would be below most radar coverage, and the background clutter of the ocean would help mask their approach. "All stations prepare for attack," Ault announced over the intercom. "Bombardier, arm torpedoes. Gunners, keep your eyes open for escort vessels. Radio silence from here on out." The Midnight Prowler crept closer to the convoy, its black hull blending perfectly with the night sky. Through his binoculars, Ault could make out the shapes of the Japanese ships, dark silhouettes against the slightly lighter horizon. 8 cargo vessels, just as intelligence had predicted, with 2 destroyers positioned at the front and rear of the formation. What the Americans didn't know was that aboard the lead destroyer, Captain Hiroshi Yamamoto was dealing with his own set of challenges. The 38-year-old destroyer commander had been escorting convoys for 18 months, and each mission seemed more dangerous than the last. American submarines prowled the shipping lanes, and their daytime air attacks had become increasingly bold and effective. "All lookouts maintain vigilance," Yamamoto ordered from his bridge. "American submarines favor night attacks, and we cannot afford to lose another convoy." His concern about submarines was well-founded, but Yamamoto had no way of knowing that the real threat was approaching from above. The Japanese Navy had developed effective tactics against submarine attacks and even against conventional air raids, but they had never encountered anything like the Black Cats. Seaman First Class Kenji Tanaka, manning a lookout position on the destroyer's bridge, swept his binoculars across the dark sky for the 100th time that evening. Like his shipmates, he was watching for the telltale wake of a periscope or the flash of torpedo tubes breaking the surface. The idea that an attack might come from the air at night, delivered by a slow-flying boat, was beyond their tactical imagination. Ault brought the Midnight Prowler to within 3 miles of the convoy before making his final approach. The Catalina skimmed the waves, its engines throttled back to reduce noise. In the bombardier's position, Lieutenant Junior Grade Robert Chen armed the 2 Mark 13 torpedoes and prepared for the most critical part of the mission. "Target bearing 015, range 2,000 yards, Chen reported quietly. "I have a clear shot at the lead cargo vessel." "Roger, Bombardier, steady as she goes." Ault's hands were rock-steady on the controls despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. This was the moment of truth. The Catalina was committed to its attack run, flying low and straight toward ships that would soon be shooting back with everything they had. The first torpedo dropped cleanly from the Catalina's bomb bay, its splash barely visible in the darkness. 5 seconds later, the second torpedo followed. Both weapons armed themselves and began their run toward the convoy, their wake-homing guidance systems seeking the largest target available. For 43 agonizing seconds, the Midnight Prowler continued toward the convoy, waiting to see if their attack had succeeded. Ault began a gentle climbing turn to the right, hoping to avoid the worst of the defensive fire that would surely follow. The first torpedo struck the cargo vessel Akagi Maru amidships, just below the waterline. The explosion lit up the night sky, revealing the full extent of the convoy to the attacking aircraft. Flames immediately began spreading through the ship's cargo holds, which contained aviation fuel and ammunition destined for Japanese airfields in the Solomon Islands. "Jesus Christ, look at that!" exclaimed gunner's mate third class Billy O'Brien from his position in the waist gun turret. The cargo ship was breaking apart before their eyes, its back broken by the torpedo's blast. The second torpedo had missed its intended target, but struck the destroyer escort, ripping a massive hole in its starboard side. Captain Yamamoto felt his ship lurch violently as tons of seawater poured into the engineering spaces. Emergency lighting flickered on as his crew fought to contain the damage and keep their vessel afloat. "All guns, open fire on that aircraft!" Yamamoto shouted, though in the darkness and confusion, his gunners had no clear target. Tracers arced wildly through the night sky, most of them aimed at empty air. The Black Cat had already disappeared into the darkness, leaving only destruction and chaos in its wake. But the night was far from over. As the convoy's survivors struggled to rescue men from the sinking ships and assess the damage, 3 more Black Cats were approaching from different directions. The second PBY, piloted by Lieutenant Patrick "Paddy" O'Connor, struck 15 minutes later from the convoy's port side. O'Connor's approach was even lower than Ault's had been, his Catalina's hull almost touching the wave tops as it bore down on the confused Japanese ships. The convoy had turned toward what they thought was safety, but they were actually moving into the path of the second attacker. "Multiple targets dead ahead," reported O'Connor's radar operator. "They're scattered now, probably trying to escape." This played directly into the Americans' hands. The tightly disciplined convoy formation that had been so effective against submarine attacks was now working against the Japanese. The scattered ships presented individual targets, and their panicked movements made them easier to track on radar. O'Connor selected a large cargo vessel that appeared to be loaded with vehicles and supplies. His torpedoes struck within seconds of each other, lifting the ship's stern completely out of the water before it settled back and began its final plunge to the bottom of the Pacific. The third and fourth Black Cats arrived almost simultaneously, catching the convoy in a devastating crossfire. By dawn, 6 of the 8 Japanese cargo ships had been sunk or badly damaged, along with one of the destroyer escorts. The successful convoy run that should have resupplied 3 Japanese island garrisons instead became a maritime disaster that would force changes in Japanese naval tactics. More importantly for the Americans, the mission proved that the Black Cat concept worked. Slow, ungainly flying boats could indeed become effective night raiders when equipped with proper radar and flown by skilled crews. Word of the success spread quickly through Pacific Fleet headquarters, and orders went out to convert more PBY squadrons to the Black Cat configuration. The psychological impact on the Japanese was equally significant. Captain Yamamoto, whose destroyer limped back to base with 73 casualties and massive damage, filed a report that sent shockwaves through the Imperial Navy's command structure. American aircraft, apparently flying boats of all things, had attacked a well-defended convoy at night with devastating effectiveness. "The enemy aircraft approached without warning," Yamamoto wrote in his after-action report. "Our radar detected nothing until the first explosions. The attackers appeared to have precise knowledge of our position and course, suggesting advanced detection equipment beyond our current capabilities." Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, no relation to the destroyer captain, read the report with growing concern in his headquarters at Truk. The Americans were adapting faster than his staff had predicted, finding new ways to exploit Japanese weaknesses. Night attacks by flying boats represented a completely new threat, one for which the Imperial Navy had no ready answer. "How many aircraft participated in this attack?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Analysis of the attack patterns suggests 4 aircraft, Admiral. All approached from different directions, all struck within a 30-minute window. It appears to have been a carefully coordinated operation." Yamamoto studied the map showing the convoy's route. The attack had occurred in an area the Japanese considered relatively safe, close to their own airfields and far from known American submarine patrol areas. If flying boats could operate effectively in such waters, no convoy route in the Pacific could be considered secure after sunset. Back at Espiritu Santo, the returning Black Cat crews were met with a celebration that mixed relief with professional satisfaction. All 4 aircraft had returned safely, though Lieutenant O'Connor's Catalina had taken several hits from anti-aircraft fire. The holes in the PBY's hull were testament to how close night combat could become, even for aircraft designed to remain unseen. Lieutenant Commander Ault gathered his pilots for a debriefing while ground crews refueled and rearmed the aircraft for potential follow-up missions. The success of this first coordinated Black Cat attack would lead to dozens more, but Ault was already thinking about improvements to their tactics. "The radar worked perfectly," he noted in his mission report. "We were able to locate the convoy from beyond visual range and approach undetected. However, we need to coordinate our attacks better." Having all aircraft arrive within 30 minutes gave the enemy too much time to recover between strikes. Radar operator Kim suggested spreading the attacks over several hours, keeping the enemy in a state of constant alert and confusion. "If we can hit them every hour or so throughout the night, their crews will be exhausted by morning. Tired sailors make mistakes." The suggestion would later be incorporated into Black Cat doctrine, leading to the harassment attacks that became one of their most effective tactics. Single aircraft would prowl shipping lanes throughout the night, attacking targets of opportunity and keeping Japanese crews in a constant state of alert. As word of the Black Cat's success spread, other squadrons began requesting conversion to the night attack role. The PBY Catalina, originally designed for patrol and rescue missions, was finding new life as a precision strike weapon. Modifications were made to improve the aircraft's night attack capabilities, including better radar equipment, more effective radio systems, and improved defensive armament. The success also attracted attention from higher command levels. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of Pacific Fleet, saw the potential for expanding Black Cat operations throughout the Pacific theater. The flying boat's enormous range meant they could operate from advanced bases, striking deep into Japanese-controlled waters and returning to safety before dawn. Manufacturing priorities began shifting to support the Black Cat program. Consolidated Aircraft Corporation, builder of the PBY, received orders for additional aircraft configured specifically for night attack missions. The company's engineers worked to reduce the Catalina's noise signature and improve its radar cross-section, making it even more difficult to detect. Training programs expanded to prepare new crews for Black Cat operations. Night flying in single-engine fighters was dangerous enough, but flying multi-engine patrol aircraft at low altitude over enemy waters required different skills entirely. Pilots had to learn to navigate by radar alone, while bombardiers practiced night torpedo attacks against moving targets. The Japanese response was swift, but ultimately ineffective. Fighter patrols were increased over convoy routes, but the Black Cat's low altitude and radar-absorbing paint made them extremely difficult to intercept. Surface vessels were equipped with additional anti-aircraft weapons, but hitting a fast-moving target at night remained nearly impossible for gunners trained for daylight combat. More sophisticated countermeasures were attempted. Japanese naval intelligence worked to identify Black Cat bases and predict their operational patterns. Long-range reconnaissance aircraft were deployed to patrol approaches to suspected PBY bases, hoping to catch the raiders on their way to or from missions. These efforts had limited success. The Black Cats operated from dispersed bases throughout the Pacific, and their flexible mission planning made it impossible to predict where they might strike next. A convoy might be safe for weeks, then suddenly face attack by multiple aircraft appearing from different directions. Captain Yamamoto, promoted despite the loss of his destroyer, was assigned to develop new convoy protection tactics. His experience surviving a Black Cat attack made him one of the Imperial Navy's few experts on defending against night air raids. Working with fighter squadron commanders and anti-aircraft specialists, he developed new procedures that showed some promise. "The key is early detection," Yamamoto explained to a gathering of convoy commanders. "The American aircraft are large and fly in straight lines during their attack runs. If we can spot them before they reach torpedo range, our fighters can intercept them." New radar equipment was installed on escort vessels, though it was less effective than American systems and often betrayed the convoy's position to prowling submarines. Fighter aircraft were stationed at airfields along major shipping routes, ready to scramble when radar detected incoming raids. These measures reduced Black Cat effectiveness somewhat, but they came at enormous cost. The resources devoted to defending against night air attacks reduced Japanese capability in other areas. Fighter aircraft tied down for convoy protection were not available for offensive operations or defense of Japanese bases. Meanwhile, Black Cat operations continued to expand and evolve. Lieutenant Commander Ault, now promoted to squadron commander, oversaw the development of new tactics that kept the Japanese off balance. His crews became experts at low-level navigation, radar interpretation, and night torpedo attacks. "The enemy is learning to fight us," Ault noted in a letter to his wife. "But we're learning faster. Every mission teaches us something new about night combat, and we're passing that knowledge to other squadrons." One of the most significant innovations was the development of coordinated attacks involving submarines and surface vessels. Black Cats would locate enemy convoys and radio their positions to nearby submarines, then attack simultaneously from air and sea. The Japanese found these combined assaults nearly impossible to defend against effectively. Radio intercept stations throughout the Pacific monitored Japanese communications, providing Black Cat crews with advance warning of convoy movements. Codebreakers working around the clock translated intercepted messages, giving American commanders detailed intelligence about enemy shipping schedules and routes. This intelligence advantage proved decisive in several major engagements. In November 1943, Black Cats intercepted a convoy carrying supplies for the Japanese garrison on Truk. Using intelligence intercepts to predict the convoy's route, 6 PBYs staged a coordinated night attack that sank 4 cargo ships and damaged 2 others. The attack on the Truk convoy demonstrated how far Black Cat tactics had evolved since that first night raid 6 months earlier. The aircraft approached from 6 different directions, timed their attacks to hit simultaneously, and used coordinated radio communications to adjust their strikes in real time. Japanese survivors described the attack as seeming to come from everywhere at once. Explosions erupted throughout the convoy formation, while radar operators reported aircraft contacts appearing and disappearing like ghosts. The psychological effect was as devastating as the physical damage. By early 1944, Black Cat squadrons were operating throughout the Pacific. From bases in Australia, New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands, they ranged across thousands of miles of ocean, hunting Japanese shipping with increasing effectiveness. The ungainly PBY Catalina had become one of the most feared weapons in the American arsenal. The success of the Black Cats also had implications beyond their direct military impact. The program demonstrated American ability to adapt existing equipment to new roles, turning a patrol aircraft into an effective strike weapon through innovative tactics and technology. This flexibility would become a hallmark of American military operations throughout the war. Engineering improvements continued throughout the conflict. Later, model PBYs featured improved radar systems, better defensive armament, and enhanced radio equipment. Some aircraft were modified with forward-firing cannons, allowing them to strafe enemy positions after dropping their torpedoes. Training programs evolved to keep pace with tactical developments. New crews spent months learning night-flying techniques, radar operation, and low-level navigation. Mock attacks against friendly convoys provided realistic training without the dangers of actual combat. The psychological warfare aspect of Black Cat operations became increasingly important. Japanese merchant sailors began refusing to sail on night convoy runs, knowing they faced attack by invisible enemies who struck without warning. This personnel shortage forced the Japanese to reduce the frequency of supply runs, further weakening their Pacific garrisons. Admiral Yamamoto's intelligence staff estimated that Black Cat operations were responsible for sinking over 100,000 tons of Japanese shipping in 1943 alone. More importantly, the threat of night air attack was forcing major changes in Japanese naval operations, diverting resources from offensive operations to defensive measures. The success story of the Black Cats reached its climax during the Philippines campaign in late 1944. As American forces prepared to invade Leyte, Black Cat squadrons were assigned to interdict Japanese reinforcement convoys attempting to reach the islands. Working in coordination with submarines and surface vessels, the PBYs created a deadly gauntlet that few Japanese ships survived. Night after night, Black Cats prowled the approaches to the Philippines, sinking transports loaded with troops and supplies desperately needed by Japanese defenders. Lieutenant Commander William Ault, now commanding an entire wing of Black Cat squadrons, flew his final combat mission on December 15, 1944. His target was a heavily escorted convoy attempting to reinforce Japanese positions in the northern Philippines. Despite intense anti-aircraft fire and fighter opposition, Ault's crew succeeded in sinking 2 cargo ships and damaging a destroyer. The mission marked the end of Ault's combat tour and the beginning of his assignment to Training Command, where he would pass on 2 years of hard-won night combat experience to new Black Cat crews. His innovations in radar navigation and night attack tactics had helped transform the PBY Catalina from a utility aircraft into a precision weapon system. As the war moved into its final phase, Black Cat operations continued, but with different objectives. Rather than hunting convoys, the PBYs were increasingly used for search and rescue missions, intelligence gathering, and special operations support. Their ability to land on water and operate from remote bases made them ideal for these diverse roles. The final Black Cat combat mission of the war took place on August 14, 1945, just hours before Japan announced its surrender. A lone PBY operating near the Kuril Islands attacked a small Japanese patrol vessel, sinking it with a single torpedo. The crew never knew they had conducted the last Black Cat attack of the Pacific War. In the post-war analysis of Pacific operations, the Black Cat program was recognized as one of the most successful examples of tactical innovation during the conflict. By adapting existing aircraft and developing new tactics, American forces had created an effective weapon system from equipment originally designed for entirely different purposes. The total impact of Black Cat operations was staggering. Over the course of the war, PBY squadrons operating in the night attack role sank more than 300 Japanese vessels, rescued over 5,000 downed airmen, and conducted hundreds of special operations missions. Their success rate was higher than any other type of strike aircraft in the Pacific theater. Perhaps more importantly, the Black Cats demonstrated that technological innovation combined with tactical flexibility could overcome seemingly impossible odds. The slow, ungainly PBY Catalina had proven that in warfare, appearances could be deceiving. What mattered was not how an aircraft looked, but how effectively it could be used. The legacy of the Black Cats extended far beyond their wartime service. Post-war aircraft development incorporated many of the lessons learned from night patrol operations, including improved radar systems, better defensive armament, and enhanced communication equipment. The tactics developed by Black Cat crews influenced the design of specialized night attack aircraft for decades to come. Veterans of Black Cat squadrons returned home with skills that proved valuable in civilian aviation. Their experience with night flying, radar navigation, and long-range operations made them ideal candidates for the expanding commercial aviation industry. Many former Black Cat crew members went on to become airline pilots, test pilots, and aviation executives. The aircraft themselves continued serving long after the war ended. Many PBY Catalinas were converted for civilian use, serving as cargo transports, passenger aircraft, and search and rescue vehicles in remote areas around the world. Their rugged construction and long range made them ideal for operations in Alaska, South America, and other frontier regions. Museums and aviation enthusiasts work to preserve examples of the Black Cat configuration, ensuring that future generations could see and understand this remarkable chapter in aviation history. Several restored PBYs continue flying today, their black paint schemes and radar equipment serving as reminders of their wartime service. The story of the Black Cats also highlighted the importance of the men who flew and maintained these aircraft. Crews who volunteered for night combat missions faced dangers that went far beyond normal aviation hazards. Flying low over enemy waters in darkness, often hundreds of miles from friendly forces, required courage, skill, and teamwork of the highest order. Ground crews who kept the aircraft operational under difficult conditions were equally essential to the program's success. Working in tropical heat, often under enemy fire, mechanics and technicians ensured that the Black Cats were ready for each night's mission. Their dedication and expertise made the tactical innovations possible. The intelligence personnel who provided targeting information and analyzed enemy movements were another crucial component of Black Cat operations. Their work with radio intercepts, aerial reconnaissance, and prisoner interrogations gave Black Cat crews the information they needed to find and attack enemy convoys effectively. As the Pacific War ended and the world moved into the atomic age, the lessons of the Black Cats remained relevant. The program had demonstrated that military success often came from unexpected sources, that technological innovation could multiply force effectiveness, and that individual skill and courage could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The transformation of the PBY Catalina from patrol aircraft to night striker represented more than just tactical innovation. It symbolized the American ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome challenges through creativity and determination. In a war where technological superiority often determined victory, the Black Cats proved that how you used your equipment mattered more than what equipment you had. Today, aviation historians consider the Black Cat program one of the most successful adaptations of existing aircraft to new roles in military history. The concept of modifying available aircraft rather than developing entirely new designs became a standard approach to meeting urgent operational requirements. The night attack techniques developed by Black Cat crews influenced military aviation long after World War II ended. Modern night attack aircraft incorporate many of the same principles, first proven effective by those black-painted PBY Catalinas prowling the Pacific darkness, hunting prey that never saw them coming until it was far too late. Lieutenant Commander William Ault and the thousands of other Black Cat crew members had taken an unlikely aircraft and turned it into one of the most effective weapons of the Pacific War. Their legacy lived on in every successful night attack mission, every downed airman rescued from hostile waters, and every innovation that made aviation safer and more effective. The Black Cats had proven that in warfare, as in life, success often came from the most unexpected sources. Japan never expected the slow, ungainly PBY Catalina to become the terror of their night convoys, but that underestimation had cost them dearly. In the darkness of the Pacific night, the hunters had become the hunted, and the age of the Black Cats had begun. The success of the initial Black Cat operations created ripple effects throughout the Pacific theater that neither side had anticipated. Within weeks of the first coordinated night attacks, Japanese naval headquarters in Tokyo was receiving increasingly desperate reports from convoy commanders describing attacks by ghost-like aircraft that appeared without warning and vanished just as quickly. Commander Kenji Nakamura, a veteran destroyer captain with 15 years of service, found himself assigned to a special task force dedicated to solving what the Imperial Navy had begun calling the Night Phantom problem. Nakamura's first briefing took place in a windowless room deep within the Naval Ministry building, where intelligence officers had compiled every available report of Black Cat encounters. "The pattern is becoming clear," explained Captain Yoshio Suzuki, the intelligence officer leading the briefing. "These attacks are not random harassment raids. The Americans have developed a systematic night attack capability using aircraft we previously considered obsolete." Nakamura studied the maps showing attack locations across the Pacific. Red pins marked successful Black Cat strikes, creating a pattern that revealed the scope of American operations. From the Aleutians to the Solomon Islands, Japanese shipping was under assault by an enemy that struck without warning and disappeared before effective counterattacks could be mounted. "What do we know about their equipment?" Nakamura asked, his finger tracing the attack routes on the map. "Intelligence suggests they are using modified patrol aircraft, probably the American PBY flying boat. Our technical analysis indicates they have installed advanced radar equipment, possibly superior to our own shore-based systems." This revelation struck at the heart of Japanese naval confidence. Throughout the early war years, Japanese forces had maintained technological superiority in night combat operations. Their optical equipment, training methods, and tactical doctrines had given them decisive advantages in night surface actions. The idea that American flying boats could neutralize these advantages was deeply disturbing to naval leadership. Back in the Pacific, Lieutenant Commander Ault was dealing with his own challenges as Black Cat operations expanded. The success of his initial missions had led to demands for more squadrons, more aircraft, and more ambitious operations. But converting standard PBY squadrons to Black Cat configuration was proving more complex than anyone had anticipated. "It's not just about painting the aircraft black and installing radar," Ault explained to Captain James Morrison, the task force commander overseeing Black Cat expansion. "The crews need months of specialized training, and we're discovering new technical challenges with every mission." Morrison, a surface warfare officer who had been assigned to aviation duty despite having no flying experience, struggled to understand the complexities involved in night attack operations. His background with destroyers and cruisers had not prepared him for the unique challenges of coordinating multi-aircraft night raids across hundreds of miles of ocean. "The Navy Department is under pressure to expand these operations as quickly as possible," Morrison replied. "Intelligence reports indicate that Japanese shipping losses are forcing them to reduce supply runs to their forward bases. We need to maintain this pressure." Ault nodded, understanding the strategic imperative but concerned about the practical difficulties. Training new Black Cat crews required experienced instructors, and most of his veteran pilots were already committed to combat operations. Creating a training pipeline that could produce qualified night attack crews without compromising current operations was proving to be a significant challenge. The technical challenges were equally complex. Each PBY conversion required extensive modifications that went far beyond the initial paint and radar installations. The aircraft's electrical systems needed upgrading to handle the additional equipment. Navigation instruments had to be modified for night operations. Communication systems required enhancement to coordinate multi-aircraft attacks. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, now promoted to lead petty officer for maintenance operations, found himself supervising modifications that pushed the PBY's design capabilities to their limits. Working in the tropical heat of forward bases, often under blackout conditions to avoid revealing their locations to Japanese reconnaissance aircraft, his crews performed miracles of improvisation and engineering. "Every aircraft is different," Rodriguez explained to a group of newly assigned mechanics. "The factory modifications help, but we have to customize each bird for its specific mission profile. Some crews want extra fuel capacity for long-range missions. Others need additional radio equipment for coordination duties. We're basically rebuilding these aircraft from the ground up." The customization process revealed just how versatile the PBY design actually was. Originally conceived as a patrol and rescue aircraft, the Catalina's large internal volume and sturdy construction made it an ideal platform for specialized equipment installations. Engineers discovered they could mount additional fuel tanks, enhanced radio gear, improved radar systems, and even experimental weapons without compromising the aircraft's basic flight characteristics. One of the most significant innovations was the development of specialized navigation equipment for night operations. Standard aviation instruments were inadequate for the precise navigation required for night torpedo attacks. Black Cat crews needed to know their exact position relative to target convoys, often while flying at extremely low altitudes in complete darkness. Lieutenant Junior Grade Chen, now promoted to Squadron Navigation Officer, worked with civilian engineers to develop new instruments specifically designed for night attack operations. "The standard magnetic compass is almost useless when you're flying 50 feet above the water in a metal aircraft full of electronic equipment," he explained. "We need systems that can give us precise bearing and distance information under combat conditions." The solution involved combining multiple navigation systems into an integrated package that provided redundant position information. Radio direction finding equipment, improved radar systems, and even early experiments with celestial navigation all contributed to giving Black Cat crews the precision they needed for successful night attacks. Meanwhile, Japanese efforts to counter Black Cat operations were intensifying. Captain Yamamoto, despite his previous losses to Black Cat attacks, had been promoted to lead a special anti-aircraft warfare school designed to train convoy defenders in night combat techniques. His first-hand experience with American night raids made him uniquely qualified to develop countermeasures. The key to defeating these attacks is early detection and coordinated response, Yamamoto told his first class of students, all experienced gunners from various escort vessels. The American aircraft are vulnerable during their attack runs, but only if we can see them coming. The training program Yamamoto developed focused on improving night vision techniques, coordinating multiple gun positions, and using searchlights effectively without revealing friendly positions to enemy submarines. Students practiced against simulated night attacks, learning to distinguish between actual threats and false alarms that could waste precious ammunition. But the Japanese faced a fundamental problem that training alone could not solve. Their radar technology, while adequate for shore-based installations, was inferior to American shipboard systems and completely inadequate for detecting low-flying aircraft at night. Without reliable early warning, even the best-trained gunners could not engage targets they could not see. Japanese technical teams worked frantically to improve their radar capabilities, but they were fighting an uphill battle against American industrial capacity and technological innovation. Each new Japanese radar system seemed to be obsolete before it could be deployed, superseded by American improvements in stealth technology and electronic countermeasures. The Americans, meanwhile, were learning lessons that would influence aviation technology for decades to come. Black Cat operations provided the first large-scale test of radar-guided night attacks, revealing both the potential and the limitations of early electronic warfare systems. Radar operator Kim, now promoted to Chief Petty Officer and assigned to the training command, found himself teaching skills that had not existed 2 years earlier. Radar interpretation is as much art as science, he explained to new operator trainees. The equipment can tell you something is out there, but understanding what you're seeing requires experience and intuition. The training program Kim developed emphasized practical experience over theoretical knowledge. Students spent hours analyzing actual radar returns from previous missions, learning to distinguish between genuine targets and electronic interference. They practiced interpreting radar displays under simulated combat conditions, with instructors providing the kind of stress and distraction they would face in actual operations. One of the most important lessons learned from Black Cat operations was the critical importance of crew coordination. Unlike single-seat fighters where the pilot controlled all aspects of the attack, successful Black Cat missions required seamless cooperation between multiple crew members, each responsible for different aspects of the mission. The pilot and co-pilot had to maintain precise control of the aircraft while flying at extremely low altitudes in darkness. The radar operator needed to provide continuous navigation updates and target information. The bombardier had to calculate attack angles and weapon release points. Gunners had to watch for enemy fighters while maintaining radio discipline that preserved the element of surprise. Training programs evolved to emphasize this crew coordination, with extensive simulator work that allowed entire crews to practice together before risking actual aircraft and personnel in combat operations. The simulators, primitive by later standards but revolutionary for their time, provided realistic training environments where crews could make mistakes and learn from them without fatal consequences. As Black Cat operations expanded throughout the Pacific, different squadrons began developing specialized tactics suited to their particular operational areas. Units operating in the Solomon Islands focused on intercepting supply convoys traveling between Japanese island bases. Squadrons based in Australia concentrated on attacking shipping in the Dutch East Indies. Northern units targeted Japanese supply lines in the Aleutians and Kurils. Each operational area presented unique challenges that required tactical adaptations. The narrow waters around the Solomon Islands allowed for coordinated attacks involving multiple aircraft, but also provided Japanese forces with more opportunities for fighter interception. The vast distances of the Central Pacific offered concealment, but required careful fuel management and navigation. Weather conditions varied dramatically across the Pacific theater, from the tropical storms of the Southwest Pacific to the fog and ice of the Aleutians. Black Cat crews had to master night flying techniques for every possible weather condition, often operating in circumstances that would have grounded conventional aircraft. Lieutenant Patrick O'Connor, now commanding a Black Cat squadron based in the Aleutians, faced challenges that his colleagues in warmer climates never encountered. "Flying at 50 feet above the water is dangerous enough in good weather," he wrote in a letter to his wife. "When you add ice formation, fog, and winds that can flip an aircraft upside down, it becomes something approaching suicide." Despite these challenges, the Aleutian-based Black Cats achieved some of the war's most spectacular successes. Operating in weather conditions that Japanese commanders considered impossible for air operations, O'Connor's squadron repeatedly struck convoys attempting to supply Japanese garrisons in the northern islands. One mission in particular demonstrated both the capabilities and the dangers of northern Black Cat operations. Intelligence intercepts had revealed a major Japanese convoy carrying winter supplies to isolated garrisons in the Kuriles. The convoy included 8 cargo ships and 4 escort vessels, representing one of the largest supply efforts the Japanese had attempted in the northern theater. O'Connor planned a coordinated attack involving 6 Black Cats approaching from different directions. The mission required flying through a storm system that had already forced the cancellation of several other operations. Winds gusting over 60 miles per hour, combined with ice formation and near-zero visibility, created flying conditions that pushed both aircraft and crews to their absolute limits. "Weather conditions are marginal to impossible," O'Connor noted in his mission briefing. "But intelligence indicates this may be the last major supply convoy the Japanese attempt before winter sets in. If we can intercept it, we may force them to abandon several forward positions." The attack commenced at midnight in conditions that can only be described as hellish. Flying through the storm, the Black Cats had to rely entirely on radar navigation while dealing with ice formation that threatened to overwhelm their anti-icing systems. 2 aircraft were forced to abort the mission due to equipment failures, but the remaining 4 pressed on toward their target. O'Connor's radar operator picked up the convoy 60 miles from the planned intercept point, scattered by the same storm that was making the attack so dangerous. Instead of a tight formation that could be attacked quickly, the Japanese ships were spread across 20 miles of ocean, each requiring individual attention. "Multiple targets bearing various," the radar operator reported. "They're scattered from hell to breakfast, but I count at least 6 large vessels." The attack that followed became legendary in Black Cat circles. For over 2 hours, the 4 American aircraft played a deadly game of hide-and-seek with the Japanese convoy, striking individual ships and then disappearing into the storm before effective counterattacks could be mounted. O'Connor himself accounted for 2 cargo ships, his torpedoes striking both vessels within minutes of each other. Lieutenant Bobby Jackson, flying on his first Black Cat mission, sank a destroyer escort that had been trying to coordinate the convoy's defense. The other 2 aircraft damaged several additional ships, leaving the convoy scattered and largely destroyed. The mission's success came at a significant cost. 1 Black Cat was lost to fighter attack during the withdrawal, its crew becoming casualties of their own success. The aircraft had lingered too long over the target area, allowing a Japanese float plane to intercept it during the climb to safety. But the strategic impact was enormous. The destruction of the convoy forced the Japanese to abandon 3 forward positions in the Kuriles, concentrating their remaining forces at more defensible locations. Intelligence estimates suggested that the single night's work by O'Connor's squadron had advanced American strategic objectives in the northern theater by at least 6 months. Word of the Kuriles raid spread quickly through Pacific Fleet headquarters, bringing Black Cat operations to the attention of the highest levels of command. Admiral Nimitz himself requested detailed briefings on Black Cat capabilities and potential for expanded operations. The briefings revealed just how far Black Cat operations had evolved from the initial experimental missions. What had begun as a desperate attempt to harass Japanese shipping had become a sophisticated night attack capability that was influencing Japanese strategic planning throughout the Pacific. Statistical analysis showed that Black Cat operations were achieving success rates higher than any other type of attack aircraft in the Pacific theater. More importantly, the psychological impact of night attacks was forcing Japanese commanders to divert significant resources to defensive measures that reduced their offensive capabilities. These operations are achieving strategic effects far beyond their actual military impact, noted Commander Sarah Williams, an intelligence analyst assigned to evaluate Black Cat effectiveness. Japanese shipping schedules have been completely disrupted, garrison supply levels are declining, and morale among merchant marine personnel is reaching critically low levels. Williams's analysis revealed that fear of Black Cat attacks was causing Japanese merchant sailors to refuse assignments to high-risk convoy routes. This personnel shortage was forcing the Japanese to reduce the frequency of supply runs, creating shortages at forward bases that weakened their defensive positions. The success of Black Cat operations also had implications for American industrial planning. The effectiveness of modified PBYs in the night attack role led to increased production orders for Catalina aircraft, even as newer and more advanced patrol aircraft were entering service. Consolidated Aircraft Corporation found itself in the unusual position of increasing production of an aircraft design that was technically obsolete. The PBY had first flown in 1935, making it ancient by wartime standards. But its proven effectiveness in the Black Cat role ensured continued demand for new aircraft and spare parts. Engineering teams at Consolidated worked to improve the PBY design specifically for night attack operations. Later production aircraft featured enhanced radar installations, improved defensive armament, and modifications that reduced their radar signature. These improvements made the aircraft more effective in their specialized role while maintaining the rugged reliability that had made the Catalina successful in the first place. The Black Cat program also influenced the development of entirely new aircraft designs. Lessons learned from night attack operations informed the requirements for next-generation patrol and attack aircraft, leading to designs that incorporated Black Cat innovations from the beginning rather than as afterthoughts. Training programs expanded to meet the demand for qualified Black Cat crews. New training bases were established throughout the Pacific, each specialized for different aspects of night attack operations. Navigation training took place at bases with challenging geographic conditions. Gunnery training emphasized night combat techniques. Radar operation was taught using the latest equipment available. The expansion of training programs created opportunities for innovation in military education. Instructors like Chief Kim developed teaching methods that combined classroom instruction with practical experience, using simulators and training aids that had never been tried before. Teaching someone to interpret radar returns is like teaching them to read a foreign language, Kim explained to a group of visiting Navy officials. The symbols on the screen mean nothing until you understand what they represent in the real world. That understanding only comes from experience. The training programs also revealed individual variations in aptitude for different aspects of night attack operations. Some pilots excelled at low-level flying but struggled with navigation. Others were excellent navigators, but had difficulty with the precision flying required for torpedo attacks. Training was modified to match individual strengths while ensuring that all crew members maintained minimum competency in all required skills. As the war progressed and American forces began their island-hopping campaign across the Central Pacific, Black Cat operations evolved to support amphibious assault operations. The aircraft's ability to operate from water made them ideal for forward reconnaissance and close support missions in areas where land-based airfields were not yet available. Black Cats began conducting pre-invasion reconnaissance missions, using their radar and long endurance to map Japanese defensive positions and identify potential threats to landing forces. These missions required flying deep into enemy-controlled waters, often spending hours loitering near heavily defended targets while gathering intelligence. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, promoted from his maintenance role to squadron command, led some of the most dangerous reconnaissance missions of the war. His aircraft would arrive over target areas hours before dawn, using their radar to map coastal defenses and identify artillery positions that could threaten landing forces. "It's like being a photographer in a war zone," Rodriguez explained to new reconnaissance crews. "You need to get close enough to see what you're looking for, but not so close that you become the target yourself. These reconnaissance missions provided intelligence that proved invaluable during amphibious assaults. Black Cat crews identified hidden gun positions, mapped underwater obstacles, and tracked Japanese troop movements that would have been impossible to detect through other means. The intelligence gathered by Black Cat reconnaissance missions influenced planning for major operations throughout the Central Pacific Campaign. Information collected during night flights over Japanese-held islands helped planners select landing beaches, identify priority targets for pre-invasion bombardment, and estimate enemy strength and capabilities. But perhaps the most important contribution of Black Cat operations was their role in search and rescue missions. The same capabilities that made them effective night attack aircraft also made them ideal for rescuing downed airmen from enemy waters. The PBY's ability to land on water, combined with its long range and endurance, made it the only aircraft capable of reaching aircrew shot down deep in enemy territory. Black Cat crews regularly flew hundreds of miles into Japanese-controlled waters to rescue pilots and aircrews from other aircraft. Lieutenant Bobby Jackson, the pilot who had distinguished himself during the Kurils raid, found himself assigned to search and rescue operations after completing his combat tour. His experience with night navigation and low-level flying made him ideally suited for the challenges of rescue operations in hostile territory. Combat missions are dangerous, but at least you're trying to hurt the enemy, Jackson reflected. Rescue missions are just dangerous. You're flying into enemy territory, landing on water under their guns, all to pick up people who are probably wounded and may not even be conscious. Despite the dangers, Black Cat rescue missions achieved remarkable success rates. Throughout the war, PBY crews rescued over 5,000 Allied personnel from waters throughout the Pacific. Many of these rescues took place under fire, with Black Cat crews landing in enemy harbors or coastal areas to retrieve downed airmen. One of the most famous Black Cat rescues took place during the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944. Lieutenant Commander Chen, now commanding his own rescue squadron, received word that a Navy fighter pilot had been shot down near the Japanese-held island of Rota. The pilot, Lieutenant Junior Grade Michael Barnes, had been forced to ditch his Hellcat after taking anti-aircraft fire during a strike mission. Barnes managed to reach his life raft, but found himself less than 10 miles from Japanese shore installations, well within range of enemy patrol boats and aircraft. Chen's Black Cat mission to rescue Barnes required flying 600 miles into enemy territory, landing in waters patrolled by Japanese submarines and surface vessels, and taking off again under conditions that would challenge even the most experienced crews. Intelligence indicates strong enemy patrol activity in the target area, Chen briefed his crew before takeoff. We'll have one opportunity to get in, pick up the pilot, and get out. If we're detected before reaching the survivor, we'll have to abort and try again later. The rescue mission launched at dusk, using the cover of approaching darkness to mask the Black Cat's approach to the rescue area. Flying at minimum altitude to avoid radar detection, Chen's crew reached the estimated position of the downed pilot just as full darkness set in. Finding a single pilot in a life raft on the vast Pacific Ocean was challenging enough under ideal conditions. Doing it at night, in enemy waters while avoiding detection by hostile forces, required skills and equipment that had been developed specifically for Black Cat operations. The aircraft's radar, originally designed for detecting ships, proved invaluable for locating the small target of a life raft on the ocean's surface. After 40 minutes of searching, the radar operator detected a contact that might be the missing pilot. Possible target bearing 090, range 3 miles, reported the radar operator. Contact is very small, consistent with life raft. Chen brought the Black Cat down to 50 feet above the water, using the aircraft's landing lights to illuminate the surface below. The powerful beams revealed Lieutenant Barnes waving frantically from his bright yellow life raft, apparently uninjured but clearly exhausted from his ordeal. Landing a PBY on the open ocean at night was dangerous under the best circumstances. With enemy forces nearby and the constant threat of submarine attack, it required nerves of steel and exceptional flying skill. Chen brought the aircraft down smoothly, the flying boat's hull kissing the wave tops before settling into the water. The rescue itself took less than 5 minutes. Crew members hauled Barnes aboard while the engines continued running, ready for immediate takeoff if enemy forces appeared. Barnes was dehydrated and suffering from sun exposure, but otherwise uninjured, grateful beyond words for his rescue. Getting airborne again proved more challenging than the landing. The ocean swell made it difficult to build up enough speed for takeoff, and the Black Cat was now heavier with an additional passenger. Chen had to use every bit of his flying skill to get the overloaded aircraft back into the air. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the craziest," Barnes commented later after the Black Cat had safely returned to base. "I still can't believe you guys flew 600 miles just to pick up one pilot." But rescuing downed airmen was considered a sacred duty among aviation units. Every pilot knew that if he was shot down, Black Cat crews would risk their own lives to bring him home. This knowledge improved morale throughout the air groups and encouraged more aggressive tactics, knowing that rescue was possible even from deep within enemy territory. The search and rescue role also provided Black Cat crews with unique intelligence opportunities. Rescued airmen often brought back valuable information about Japanese defenses, aircraft types, and tactical procedures they had observed during their missions. Debriefing rescued pilots became an important source of tactical intelligence that complemented information gathered through other means. Pilots who had been shot down over Japanese positions could provide first-hand accounts of anti-aircraft defenses, fighter tactics, and base locations that were invaluable for planning future operations. As American forces advanced across the Central Pacific, Black Cat operations evolved to support the changing strategic situation. The capture of advanced bases like Saipan and Guam provided new staging areas for Black Cat operations, allowing them to strike deeper into Japanese-controlled territory. Operating from these forward bases, Black Cat squadrons began conducting missions against the Japanese home islands themselves. Long-range night attacks against shipping in Japanese coastal waters represented the ultimate evolution of Black Cat tactics, bringing the war directly to Japan's doorstep. These missions against the Japanese home islands required flying over 1,500 miles each way, pushing both aircraft and crews to their absolute limits. Navigation had to be perfect, fuel management critical, and weather planning essential for mission success. Commander O'Connor, now leading an entire Black Cat wing, planned and executed the first night attack mission against shipping in Tokyo Bay. The symbolic impact of American aircraft attacking in the heart of Japanese home waters was enormous, even though the actual military damage was relatively limited. "The Japanese people have been told their home islands are invulnerable," O'Connor noted in his mission planning briefing. "Proving that American aircraft can strike anywhere, anytime will have psychological effects far beyond the physical damage we can inflict." The Tokyo Bay mission required careful coordination with submarine forces and intelligence units. Submarines stationed off the Japanese coast provided navigation references and weather information. Intelligence units monitored Japanese radio communications to provide warning of enemy fighter activity. The mission itself was a complete success from a tactical standpoint. 2 Black Cats penetrated Japanese home waters undetected, attacked shipping in Tokyo Bay, and returned safely to base. The psychological impact was exactly what American planners had hoped for. With Japanese radio broadcasts acknowledging the attack and promising increased homeland defenses. But the mission also highlighted the limitations of Black Cat operations as the war moved into its final phase. The enormous distances involved in attacking the Japanese home islands stretched the PBY's capabilities to their breaking point. Fuel consumption left no margin for error, and the long flight times exposed crews to enemy interception for extended periods. Recognition of these limitations led to the development of new tactics that maximized Black Cat effectiveness while minimizing exposure to enemy action. Shorter-range missions with higher frequency became the preferred approach, maintaining pressure on Japanese forces while reducing risks to American crews. The final phase of Black Cat operations focused on supporting the preparations for Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of Japan. Intelligence-gathering missions provided detailed information about Japanese coastal defenses, while harassment attacks disrupted shipping that might have interfered with invasion preparations. As the war approached its end in the summer of 1945, Black Cat operations had achieved a level of sophistication and effectiveness that would have seemed impossible when Lieutenant Commander Ault flew that first experimental night mission 2 years earlier. From uncertain beginnings as a desperate improvisation, the Black Cats had evolved into a precision weapon system that influenced Japanese strategic planning throughout the Pacific. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, followed by Japan's surrender, ended Black Cat combat operations before the full potential of the program could be realized. Plans for expanded operations against the Japanese home islands were canceled, and Black Cat squadrons found themselves transitioning from combat operations to peacetime duties. The end of the war brought recognition for the Black Cat program's extraordinary achievements. Statistical analysis revealed that Black Cat operations had sunk or damaged over 600 Japanese vessels, rescued more than 5,000 Allied personnel, and conducted hundreds of successful intelligence missions. More importantly, the program had demonstrated American ability to adapt and innovate under pressure, turning an obsolete patrol aircraft into one of the most effective weapon systems of the war. The lessons learned from Black Cat operations would influence military aviation development for decades to come. Veterans of Black Cat squadrons returned home with skills and experiences that were unique in military history. They had pioneered techniques in night navigation, radar operation, and low-level attack that became standard procedures for future generations of military aviators. Many Black Cat veterans remained in military service after the war, applying their expertise to the development of new aircraft and tactics for the emerging Cold War era. Their experience with electronic warfare, night operations, and long-range missions proved invaluable as military aviation evolved to meet new challenges. The aircraft themselves, those ungainly PBY Catalinas that had prowled the Pacific darkness, found new roles in the post-war world. Some continued in military service with Allied nations, while others were converted for civilian use in remote areas where their ability to operate from water remained valuable. Museums and private collectors worked to preserve examples of Black Cat aircraft, ensuring that future generations could see and understand these remarkable machines. The combination of flat black paint, radar equipment, and torpedo racks told the story of one of aviation's most unlikely success stories. The legacy of the Black Cats extended far beyond their wartime achievements. They had proven that in warfare, success often came from unexpected sources, that technological innovation could multiply the effectiveness of existing equipment, and that skilled, dedicated personnel could overcome seemingly impossible odds. In the broader context of World War II, the Black Cat program represented the kind of adaptability and innovation that characterized American military performance throughout the conflict. Faced with urgent operational requirements and limited resources, American forces repeatedly found ways to achieve their objectives through creativity and determination. The transformation of the PBY Catalina from a utility aircraft to a precision weapon system demonstrated that military effectiveness was not just about having the most advanced equipment, but about using available resources in innovative ways. This lesson remained relevant long after the war ended, influencing military planning and procurement decisions for generations. As historians studied the Pacific War in subsequent decades, the Black Cat program emerged as one of the most successful examples of tactical innovation during the conflict. The combination of existing technology, innovative tactics, and skilled personnel had created a capability that exceeded the sum of its individual parts. The story of the Black Cats also highlighted the importance of individual initiative and creativity in military operations. From Lieutenant Commander Ault's first experimental mission to the sophisticated operations of the war's final months, success had depended on the willingness of individuals to try new approaches and learn from both successes and failures. Perhaps most importantly, the Black Cat program demonstrated that in warfare, appearances could be deceiving. The slow, ungainly PBY Catalina had looked like anything but a deadly weapon, Yet it had become one of the most feared aircraft in the Pacific. This reminder that effectiveness mattered more than appearance became one of the program's most enduring lessons. Today, as military planners face new challenges and develop new capabilities, the story of the Black Cats remains relevant. The program's emphasis on adaptability, innovation, and effective use of existing resources provides timeless lessons for military professionals and historians alike. The Black Cats had taken an aircraft that Japan dismissed as obsolete and turned it into a weapon that dominated the night skies over the Pacific. In doing so, they had proven that in warfare, as in many aspects of life, success often came from the most unlikely sources. The hunters had indeed become the hunted, and the legacy of that transformation continued to influence military aviation long after the last Black Cat returned from its final mission.